Well, hello there. And look at this. I wanted to say I was on time, but I just looked at the little clock on the top of my computer and it says 5:02 p.m. California time. I didn't factor in the couple of minutes it takes to set everything up. Any of you who've ever done YouTube Live knows you have to go in, type in your title, and hit a few buttons and settings, and then go on. So that was the 2 minutes there. But I felt it very important that I be on time today. Hey, Chris, yes, I'm on time. I'm going to wait for more people to come on board. I thought this was a rerun. No, this is very much live today. I'm going to wait for a few more people to come on board, so I may just talk about a little nonsense stuff here for a while. But um, I know that many of you watch this after it's recorded, but I have a feeling I may have a larger number of people on live today. People who are followers of Dr. Whimsy Anderson and myself, because we do 2 shows a week together on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Much bigger show than this little thing that I do here. you know, we actually have several thousand people who watch us, and Whimsy is, she's been going through some difficult times. She's doing better, but there was some controversy last week, and I've had a lot of people reaching out to me. So I suspect a lot of people may reach out to me today wanting to ask questions. So I want to do the best that I can. And many times I'm late doing this show, my show, because I am actually making phone calls for Dr. Whimsy, on her behalf. I work as her assistant and I make a lot of cold calls. I guess that's the correct term for it. Cold calls to a lot of her clients, just courtesy calls, to remind people of our services. And that if people need to get a message through to Whimsy or need help booking an appointment, that I, as her assistant, am there for them. And sometimes I'm late doing this show because I'm still talking with people. It's like trying to pull the brakes on a locomotive freight train that's still running, and I have to get on here when I can. But today I purposely ended my calls a little earlier because I wanted to get on here on time, because I think today is a day I can do more for Dr. Whimsy through something like this and talking directly than just making cold calls to people. And hey, Ward, thank you for joining. Yeah, well, I hope you all had a good Thanksgiving. I purposely kept my Thanksgiving low key. Low key. I had invitations, um, and I did see some dear friends, and that was good. But I kept it very, very simple, mostly because I'd been tired. I'd been working a lot, and I had a lot of projects here around the apartment. Those of you who've been watching the show know I've been doing this organizational kick. I have this hall closet, this big walk-in closet that has become, like some of you have called it, Fibber McGee's closet, all the stuff crammed in there. And I can't believe how much work it's been organizing it. Once I started pulling all that stuff out here in my living room, it's been about a month of just sorting through and donating and giving, pitching out. What do I want to keep? Do I have room to keep this? That kind of thing. And then I did transfer some things to storage. Um, yeah, Ward, I did this virtually on the dot, and I was explaining why. Uh, no, well, I had my hair trimmed, Ward. It's still long. I just have it pulled back, but I got it trimmed. I have some, I get the layers cut like every couple of months. I did that about a week ago. Um, you know, Something to do for the holidays to be ready. Should I go out and do anything? Should I go out and socialize? Hi, Andy. Thank you for joining. I'm just waiting for some more people here. Um, Today is the day I'm waiting because a lot of viewers of the show with Whimsy have been reaching out to me. And I've answered a few of you, but it's just too much to try to answer everybody individually. And also, it's a lot to say to just try to type answers up over and over and over again. So I thought I'd do it here on the show if people do come through, like I Hope you will. Um, what was this? Okay, my tea day, my turkey day went okay. I took mama to a restaurant. Only two or three others families were there. That's often the case. Because I've done that some years. Friends and we've just gone to a restaurant. Like nobody really wants to bother with cooking. Nobody really wants to bother with cleanup, especially people who work during the week and just need a day of rest. And for many people, unfortunately, this often falls upon the women in the family, the mothers, the grandfathers. It's a heavy, heavy work day, and I know some people even start preparing Thanksgiving meals days and weeks in advance. Some people will even start cooking like in October and putting things in the freezer in preparation. What was it? Oh, let's see who else just joined here. Oh, Sydney has joined us. Hi, Sydney. I thank you all for being here. I'm just seeing if some others. The reason I say I'm trying to hold off for a bit is because I don't want to have to keep saying the same thing over and over throughout the show. A lot of people have been asking me about Dr. Whimsy. Um, Whimsy is doing much better, and I'm deeply loyal and I'm deeply devoted to her. And that's why I want to speak up and speak on her behalf today, because there has been a lot of controversy. What was this, Andy? Did you watch The Electric Company? I see the guy who was Spider-Man on the show passed away. I remember The Electric Company as a kid. I was too old, frankly, to be watching The Electric Company when it was on. I was like 11 or 12, but it was one of those things where it was just kind of like something to have on in the background. It was kind of like comfort food. So I am familiar with the show, but I don't remember a guy playing Spider-Man on the show. That might have been a different era. Um, what was his mama used to go? Ward saying mama used to go all out way back when she roasted the turkey while my papa would make the chestnut and sausage stuffing. It's good your father helped. My father helped to a degree also. When I was saying this to someone who's asking me about my childhood Thanksgivings, that I didn't really have them. Um, you know, I grew up like an only child. I wasn't an only child, but my sister was 14 years older than me. We were the only siblings in the family. My parents just spaced just very far apart. So my sister left home for college and I was in kindergarten. So I grew up like an only child. So it was just my mother, father, and myself. And parents were just not into sorry, I was picking up somebody on the floor here. My parents were not really into it. I remember we would always watch the Macy's Day Parade, but we never did anything special for Thanksgiving. I mean, I remember in some later years, like when I was in high school, we found that we loved making a turkey because we always loved the turkey sandwiches and the turkey leftovers. In fact, so much so that after Thanksgiving and even after Christmas, we would still be roasting turkeys and keeping them around for that reason. And my mother made these incredible turkey sandwiches. I mean, they're probably not very healthy, but remember these French these long buns like French bread, not quite like French bread. She would butter those and put salt on them, and then the turkey and the lettuce and the tomato. Oh my God, it was so good. So good, and she would always serve them hot. Mm, I could go for that right now. Um, Comfort food. My mother also made a really good roast beef hash, roast beef and potatoes, and I loved it. I loved it so much that whenever I would come home from college, my mother would have a batch of that made for me. She was always trying to fatten me up. I was a being tall in those days, I was also very skinny. When I was like 17, 18, 19 years old, it was 6'2" and probably weighed 145, 150 pounds. I had a metabolism like a hyperactive rabbit. I could eat anything in sight and never gain an ounce, much to my sister's tremendous chagrin. Because she's been kind of the opposite there. What was that, Chris? put leftover stuffing in a waffle press. That's an idea. Ward, did my mother make pecan pie? My mother made a lot of pies and cakes. She was quite the baker, so I believe she made pecan pie, not that frequently, but like I said, Thanksgiving was just not a big deal in our house. We didn't really celebrate it. It wasn't until after I was an adult, after college and beyond, that I started going to people's houses for Thanksgiving and really getting to experience what it was really like. And sometimes I'd fly out and see my sister with her children in Colorado, and we'd do the whole thing, like, what are you? We'd be at the table, like, what are you thankful for this day? That kind of thing before we would start carving the turkey like a pilgrim. Um, what was this, Andy? I love the Dean Martin roast. Yeah, those were good. Now, and they're readily available. I mean, YouTube, and I know they've been released as DVD sets. See, I was hoping more people were going to log on. I really wanted to talk about whimsy, and I'm trying to put that off for a bit. And I was also going to talk about, I was thinking, well, I need a topic today. Always have to have that ace in a hole. And of course, November 30th, yesterday, was the 85th anniversary of the marriage of Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz. And interestingly enough, that was one of the very first videos I ever posted on this channel. It was, in fact, it was my very first live shows. And, that's where I reinforced the idea in my head that I can talk about old Hollywood off the top of my head, and I don't even need notes or preparation. And I did a 20-minute show just talking about the marriage of Lucy and Desi. And I don't know if I want to go into all that now, but let me check some comments here. I was watching Finger with Sean Connery. And see, he died on Halloween 5 years ago. I met Sean Connery once. Met him in my work. Really nice man. Very down to earth. But there were, shall we say, some middle-aged Bobby Stocksers in the store, women in their 40s and 50s who saw him. Oh, Sean Connery, Sean Connery, Sean. They were making such a fuss over him. And the poor man, I know he wanted to get out of the store. He wanted to leave, but he was so gracious and he was so polite and he was such a gentleman to those ladies. And Joyce, I'm happy you're here. Hi, thank you for joining. Joyce, I was just telling to people, I'm sure you know what's been going on with Whimsy also, and I'm going to talk about that in a bit. I'm just waiting for a few more people to come on here. Yeah, Andy, I'm always happy, and Joyce is here as well. She's a great, great lady, a great friend. And I might add, if you don't know this by now, a gifted astrologer and numerologist. And she certainly helped me a lot. In fact, Joyce, I could have, when we talked 2 or 3 weeks ago, I should have asked you some questions about what was going on during this retrograde, because while I wasn't directly involved, someone we love dearly was. What was this here? Andy, check how Sasha, did she eat well on Thanksgiving? Oh, it was just another day for her, but she's here. She's here watching the show with me. Yes. I'm sorry, I woke you up. She was sleeping. I woke her up to hold her up to the camera. She probably shouldn't have done that. Joyce, I found you on TV and now on my phone too. Well, great. And Sydney, hey, yes, she's saying hi to you, Sasha. She's a good little girl. I love this cat. In fact, I don't relate to people who say they hate cats. I'm sorry, I don't. Cats are wonderful. They're the best. And something I love about cats? They're low maintenance. I've had dogs. I love dogs, but dogs are a lot of work. It's like having a 3-year-old child that never grows up. Cats, they're so independent. Leave them food, water, and a litter box. They're fine. They're fine. Like if you need to go away for the day or something, they're fine. In fact, their attitude is, "Go, go, leave me alone, leave me alone. I want the place to myself." So that seems to be their attitude. So as much as I love dogs, I've become a cat person by default because I think at least the last 30 years I've only had cats. Mostly, you know, mostly because, a dog, you just when you live by yourself, it's very hard to have one. When you go to work during the day and you don't have a yard, you live in an apartment, it's extremely difficult. And also with dogs, you have to be on their schedule. And their schedule usually means getting up like 6:30 in the morning to take them outside, and usually take them outside in the cold weather where it's pouring rain to get them to pee, and they just stand there shivering like, "Can't you let me back inside? I can pee in your living room. Why do we have to be out here?" That's their attitude. So I'm happier with cats. Anyway, I guess I'm not gonna get more people right now, or you're gonna come in later, and I may have to keep repeating this, but I really wanted to be here on time today because I wanted to address what's been going on with my beloved friend, Dr. Whimsy Anderson. And I am trying to answer questions that people have been putting to me. And first of all, I want to say she's doing much, much better. It was a hard time for her. She took a trip to Colombia, and she immediately was stricken with altitude sickness. And that's where you have lack of oxygen. And oftentimes the brain is affected by that. And on top of that, she was going through some personal issues, and she's been working very hard. She's frankly been overworked at times. And she's a gifted psychic, intuitive, in addition to being a naturopathic doctor. And anybody who does that sort of thing, because I've done it myself, part of how I make my living right now is you have to be very, very careful not to take on outside energy, negative energy, demonic energy. Even it's just out there. It's out there. You have to really, really shield yourself. You have to really protect yourself. And I think in Dr. Whimsy's case, it was like a perfect storm of elements that hit her very hard on that trip. And she's become a very public person with a lot of followers. I, for one, I'm deeply, deeply devoted to her, and I will talk about that in just a moment. The reasons why I'm so devoted to her. It's very easy to be devoted to my beautiful friend, but this was I'm trying to be very careful because this is really for Whimsy to explain, and she already has done this on her channel. So I just know people have been coming to me. That's why I wanted to talk about it. It was a very vulnerable time for her, and it was just a perfect. I think Whimsy would agree with me. It was just a perfect storm of elements that hit her very hard, and Whimsy being deeply empathetic and deeply emotional and deeply sensitive, as I tend to be. A lot of that sorrow just started coming to the surface. A lot of anger started coming to the surface. And I have to be careful here because this is her business, but family issues, um, anger at how people responded to some of her comments. She's deeply, deeply impassioned as an Israeli citizen. She has dual citizenship. So Israel is very dear to her heart. The goings on in the Middle East are things that affect her very personally and profoundly. We've even addressed it on our show on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And again, I'm just being very careful here not to violate Whimsy's space and privacy. But I just wanted to talk about it. Yes, Ward, I do hope She will be better physically and emotionally soon. And I can assure you, she is on the path. If you've seen 2 or 3 of her most recent videos, you can see that for yourself. She's in a better place, but Whimsy has enough awareness and objectivity to know she does need to work a bit on her physical, physical and mental health right now. You know, we've all been there. We've all been there. I certainly don't judge it. I never judge it, and I would never judge my beloved friend, Whimsy. The thing I want to make very clear, look, I'm even wearing this today. This oversized t-shirt that was sent to be my mistake when we first started doing the show. We thought it'd be cute if we had these t-shirts. But there's Dr. Whimsy. I never wear this shirt because I swim in it. It's like an extra, extra large. But I wanted to wear this today because today I am in solidarity with my beloved friend. And I even had some of you have written to me, well, I canceled my subscription to Whimsy's channel. And Chuck, if I see you going down the quote unquote Whimsy rabbit hole, I will cancel you also. And I want to respond graciously to that comment. I'm not upset by that in any means, and I don't blame you for feeling that way. But I never feel like I'm going down a rabbit hole with Whimsy. I speak my own mind. I speak my own opinions, especially when I do the show with her. Not everybody will agree with me either, or agree with her. But this was a case where a lot of people were disagreeing with her, and and Whimsy was just going through a very aggravated time. The lack of oxygen to her brain, which can cause, I looked up altitude sickness, and I didn't send it to her because Whimsy is a doctor. She's a naturopathic doctor. She knows these things, but it matched a lot of the symptoms that she's been going through. And now she's back home in Portland. She is on the way to recovery. I think she just right now needs a lot of rest. She needs a lot of love. And I really would consider it a marvelous favor if all of you, if you believe in prayer, please pray for Whimsy. Pray for Whimsy. Send her love. Send her good energy. She gives so much of herself. So much. And now she needs people to give back to her a little bit, it would help. But I just want you to know, anyone may think I'm going down some rabbit hole with Whimsy or something. No, I think for myself. In fact, Whimsy encourages me to think for myself. But I just want to tell you why I feel such loyalty to her. This goes back. Yes, this is a little different show today, but I needed to address this. It goes back more than a decade. I'm trying to remember now. Was it 2015, 2016? I think we started working together in West Hollywood, both in the in the health industry. I'm sorry, Andy, you said if you go down the rabbit hole, I would still never leave your stream, Chuck, because I love your Hollywood stories. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Andy, you were also mentioning about what was this? Yeah, I was supposed to meet Eric Estrada, but he couldn't come because he had problems, vertigo, high blood pressure. I couldn't go on a plane to meet Larry Wilcox. Well, that's the thing we forget. Eric Estrada, I'm guessing he must be close to 80 now. I always think of him, that young man on chips. It's like I went to a Hollywood show once, and Randolph Bantooth used to play Johnny Gage on Emergency. That show was back in the 70s. So it was very strange to see this, shall I say it, old man at the convention. Very nice, still looks good, but he's up there in years. And I'm sure that's true for Eric Estrada as well. Anyway, I was just taking a sip of water there and gave an inadvertent product endorsement with my you-know-what cup. But anyway, Whimsy and I started working together about 10 years ago, and maybe a little over. And in the health industry, and where I worked at, my specialty was vitamins, herbs, homeopathy. And she was brought into our place initially as to be our once a week naturopathic doctor to answer questions, and we started, wow, what a wonderful service that would be to give. And she and I just hit it off. We hit it off right from the start. It was like one of those we've all had those friendships where you don't even have to try for it. It's like you've known each other forever. I'm a believer in past lives. I'm certain of that. In fact, I'm certain she and I have been brother and sister in several lifetimes. It was that kind of camaraderie and kinship right from the very, very beginning. And we we just worked in harmony, worked together. And then she started coming into the store. She was such a success. So we brought her in twice a week. And then we started bringing her in 3 times a week. And we worked together particularly because we used to have this thing in the store. It was a special hair test where you would pluck 3 strands of hair and put them on this special dish. Best way I think Whimsy described it this way as a little MRI machine where it would examine the DNA structure in the hair and then through the internet send this to a lab in Germany, Frankfurt, Germany. I think it was Frankfurt or was it Hamburg? I don't know. But anyway, went to Germany. And then we would get the results sent back to us in about 15 minutes, the full nutritional profile. And because Whimsy and I were both trained in this, we could put together a profile of the person. I'm just giving loose examples here because I don't want to go off on a sidetrack here, a rabbit hole talking about this, which I usually could. But, like, for example, if you would see a deficiency in B vitamins, particularly things like B5, which is pantothenic acid, those were big indications that this was a person who had adrenal issues, had a lot of stress. Sometimes we would see things like a lack of like tryptophan, a lack of GABA, nutrients like that. That would tell us this was a person who maybe was more prone to depression or ADHD symptoms. We'd see other nutrients lacking where it kind of told us maybe this person's immune system is compromised, or we'd see indications they might be fighting a bacterial infection. It was amazing what that hair, 3 strands of hair could reveal, but you needed expert people, myself and Whimsy, who could decipher all that information. So we did a lot of that together, and that bonded us as well. And I think one of the first things that really endeared Whimsy to me was I was having what I thought was an eye infection in this eye because it was getting really red and irritated. And then one morning I woke up, the eye was like swollen shut, and I was having trouble seeing out of it. I still thought it was just a bad eye infection. I thought, "Well, I got to get myself to a doctor." Well, I also had this little bit of a rash on my temple. Just I thought nothing of it. And it was Whimsy who looked at me and said, "Chuck, you have shingles." I said, "I can't have shingles. Shingles are supposed to be very painful." And she said, "No, no, it depends on the nerve path that it is traveling down. It's not always painful." She said, "Trust me on this. That is shingles, and that has gone down to your eye. You go to our boss and tell him you need to leave right now and get yourself to an emergency room." Well, I can tell you, I never would have done that if it hadn't been for Whimsy. And I got to the emergency room and they couldn't see me for quite a few hours. And it was finally 10 o'clock that night. Hey, Danny. Yeah, oh, I'm doing just great. Thank you for asking. And I got there, and it wasn't until about 10 o'clock that night they got an on-call ophthalmologist to come see me in the emergency room. And, I still remember what agony that was because they had to put the drops in, dilate my eyes, and they had to put the bright, bright light, and I was like, "Ah!" I mean, literally crying, tears running down my face. It was so painful, that light in my eyes, because my eye was so irritated. But he looked in and he said, "You're very lucky. That virus was like a hair's breadth away from striking your optic nerve. You would have been blinded in that eye. You could have very well lost that eye. And you got here just in time." And of course, they put me on a series of antiviral medications. I had to do anti-inflammatory drops, and I had to see an ophthalmologist 3 times a week. I also had to take 3 weeks off from work because I was blind in that eye. Blind in that eye. Only time in my life I've ever had to experience that. And what was interesting, it wasn't darkness. It was actually like white. It was like being in a fog or a room full of very intense steam where it's completely white and you can't see a thing. That's what it looked like to me. I could make out light, but that was all. So I had only one eye to see with. So I had to take 3 weeks off from work. They said, "You have got to keep your stress down." And needless to say, my work was very stressful. It just was. I couldn't help that. So it was advice I happily took. I took a leave of absence, went on temporary disability, and I was okay. I was okay. Because a year or so later, I went for an eye exam. Oh, and by the way, I will say this to you. When I was going through that, I said, "Am I going to be okay?" And they said, "We can't tell you." The ophthalmologist said, "Until this inflammation goes down," and he said, "You've got massive inflammation in that eye. Till that goes down, we can't possibly tell you if there's been any damage or not." So anyway, things were okay, and it was a year later, I was going for just my regular eye exam, and, where they look in your eyes and everything, and the doctor said, "If you hadn't told me, I never would have known this happened to you because you don't have a trace of damage in your eye, not a trace." But anyway, I to get back on track with this was because of my angel, Dr. Whimsy Anderson. She saved my eyesight. Um, she's just been the most wonderful friend to me. She a doctor, but the most accessible person, just so filled with warmth and compassion and down to earth. And it was later she started training me. She trained me to be a naturopathic doctor's assistant. She did this personally on her own time. She would have me over to her home, cook me dinners, and then we would hit the medical books for several hours. And my God, I remember when we first started, I said, "Whimsy, I don't think I'm smart enough to do this. I don't know that I can take on something like this." And she said, "Oh, come on, nonsense. Of course you can." And I said, "Well, it scares me." And she said, "You think I wasn't scared? You think I wasn't scared?" And I was in medical school. And let me tell you, every single person in medical school was scared shitless. We were scared. None of us thought we could handle it. It's intimidating. It's supposed to be intimidating. But she said, "I tell you what, you're going to read all this the first time. It's not going to make any sense. It's going to be so confusing to you. You're going to read it a second time. It's going to be confusing. The third time you read it, it's going to start to fall into place and make sense. And the fourth time, I promise you this, you're going to start to get it." And she was right. And another thing that Whimsy said to me was, "I don't want you to think of medicine as a science. I want you to think of it as an art." Because she knew me, the artist, very visually oriented and so forth. And she said, "I want you to think of it as an art. Think about the beauty of how the human body works. It's like poetry in motion. It's like a beautiful orchestral symphony, all of these different parts being played at the same time and how it all comes together. And she said, look at it also like how you look outward in astrology and astronomy to the stars, the moons, and the planets. You go inward into your body. It's just as complex. There's still all these mysteries unraveling and all of these things that work when we don't know how they work or why they work, but we know they do, and they work in this beautiful, beautiful synergy, much like the universe works. Joyce, you're hearing this, I'm sure, with astrology. It's just incredible. I remember talking to a man who used to work at NASA, and we were talking about God. We were talking about love, and I thought, well, he's just going to be very scientific about this. And he said, you know what? You know how I know there's a God? This is coming from a scientist. He said, you look at the beautiful harmony and symmetry of all the stars and the planets. He said, that's love. There's this great body of love throughout the universe that makes all of this tie together and work. And he said, okay, as a scientist, we at NASA, when we would fire a rocket, say to the moon or to Mars or Venus, or send a satellite out, we had to calculate to the last little detail, the tiniest detail, calculate how this was going to go out and end up in this spot like 2, 3, 4, 10 years from now. And he said we could always count on it, the precision of the universe. It was so mathematically precise. And he said, that's love. That's God. That's something that goes beyond the human realm. That's like a genius that we didn't even understand. We just knew we could mathematically calculate that. And so anyway, I'm just trying to get back to Whimsy, how she told me to think of medicine as art and not as science. And I just got to tell you, that woman is one of the best teachers I've ever had in my life. And on her channel, she teaches tarot classes, she teaches heart-centered remote viewing classes. She's very much a teacher when we do our shows. Our shows have been largely about current events. And I've mentioned on this show many times, I have to really be in my element. I have to do my homework to do her show. This show, I can just get on here and start talking crap with you guys. I can just go freeform. But Whimsy show, I definitely have to do my preparation for. But that's all good for me because, again, that contributes to my education. It stretches my boundaries. It shows me that I can do a lot more than I think I can. Because thanks to Dr. Whimsy Anderson, I actually did get my license as a naturopathic doctor's assistant. I actually got my license thanks to that brilliant, brilliant woman and her months of dedicated teaching with me, her generosity with me. And I'm speaking of her virtues today because I'm seeing from my regular viewers here a lot, not as many have come on as I thought would. I suspected I suspect a lot of people are going to come on later and watch the recording of this because many have been coming to me asking about Whimsy. Is she okay? What's going on with her? And I just wanted to speak on her behalf of what a really good person she is. And I want to emphasize that my friend is the real deal. She is sincere. She's human. She's human. She made what some of you may consider to be a series of mistakes last week. And there were some people who were insulted by things she said and hurt and wounded. And I know a lot of people canceled their subscriptions to the channel. But I wanted to come on here today in solidarity with my good friend and to speak on her behalf. And I hope you trust what I have to say when I speak of her. I wanted to tell of the goodness, like what she did to save my eyesight in one eye, how she personally taught me naturopathic medicine. And then, okay, the reason I'm sitting here right now doing this show is because of Dr. Whimsy Anderson. Um, and it all started, what was this, 3 years ago? 3 years ago? Where I was kind of in a bad place. We've all been there. We've all been there. We feel like what is it, Sasha? Come on. She just woke up. Hold her to the camera one more time and let her go. She probably wants to go to her litter box or her food. What was I saying? Yeah. I was going through a really bad time because I felt that I had been doing a lot of work to improve my life. I was putting a lot of stuff out to the universe and I wasn't getting anything back. At least that's what it felt like in the moment. So I was getting angry and I was getting bitter. I was getting very bitter about it and disillusioned. This is why I bring this up to say, I understand where Dr. Whimsy was last week. She was getting a little bitter, a little delusioned, feeling perhaps betrayed by the universe, by God, whatever you want to put it. Because that's where I was. And it was Whimsy who reached out to me. She had been trying to get me to do her show for a long time. And I was always like, oh, Whimsy, I can't do this. I can't do a live show. Oh my God, I'd freak out if I went on live. And she was like, you can do this. You can. And one day she contacted me and said, can we do an interview? We'll just pre-record it. I was like, okay, I'll pre-record a show. And it went well. We did like a half-hour interview. And she said, well, that went really well. Tell you what, you're doing the show live at 5 today. Bye. And I'm like, Whimsy. Those first shows, well, I'd have to go back and watch some of them, but I remember them being disasters. I was having lighting problems. I was having microphone problems. I was having internet problems. And she was patient with me, stuck it out. And she gave me room to make a lot of mistakes. She gave me room to be nervous as hell those first few weeks. But I started to fall into it and I started to get comfortable with it and I started loving it. And even branched out and started doing this on my own, and I'm very humble about all of it. But Whimsy's show has brought me a lot of recognition. It's brought me a lot of new friends. It's brought me a lot of professional work. With my artwork, my illustration, I've done several. And here was the other thing Whimsy got me to do. Something I don't do too much on this show, and she's been after me. Start doing it on this show too. I do psychic channeling. And I also do readings for people, tarot, oracle cards, pendulum. I'm surprisingly good at it. It's something I love doing for people. And it was something I always kept private, very private, because I didn't want people publicly calling me a nut, calling me a fake, calling me a fraud, whatever. I really was fearful of that. And Whimsy kept assuring me, that's not, hey, Kelly, thank you for joining. Whimsy kept assuring me, no, Chuck, that's not going to happen. I know that's not going to happen. She's very intuitive. And she said, oh, I know. People are going to know you're being real. They're going to know you're being sincere. And I said, Whimsy, it still scares me. And she said, just do it. Just try it. And I did. And this is when you're on live, you don't have a safety net. It's like you're like the circus performer at the pole. You're walking on the high wire. You're doing that. And to my amazement, it went well. It started going well. And we've been doing it ever since. And I read channel messages that I receive. I used to do that on our Thursday show. The response has been excellent. And I've had a lot more people reaching out to me to do readings for them and commissioning me for artwork. I guess what I'm trying to say is just whimsy keeps taking me out of comfort zones, teaching me that I had the power all along. I'm thinking of Glinda, the Wizard of Oz. You had the power all along, my dear. Just click your heels 3 times. But yeah, whimsy has educated me in that respect. So yeah, I'm going to defend my friend. I'll defend my friend to the very end because she's a good person. And I'm very proud to not just the shows I do with her and what she brings to me. I work in real life as her assistant. Hence I said at the beginning of the show, and as I say often at the beginning of the shows, why I'm often late getting on here is because I am making phone calls to her patients and clients. And I'm always proud to do that. I am proud to represent whimsy. That old thing about what was that? Was it in The Devil Wears Prada? Meryl Streep to Anne Hathaway. When you sit at the reception desk, you represent me. It's the first thing people see. Well, in a way, when I'm making phone calls on her behalf, I am representing whimsy. I'm like her ambassador. But it's very easy to do this because you know what? It's always easy when you just tell the truth. It's the easiest thing in the world. And you just tell the truth. And all I do is speak the truth about whimsy. When she was training me to be an assistant, I'm a naturopathic assistant. I got to be in her office with patients and shadow her. And I watched what a really good doctor she is, how she really listens to people. She encourages people to ask questions. She even said to me, that's part of the art of a diagnosis. I think she actually put it that way, the art of a diagnosis, because she said there are too many doctors who just look at test results. They just look at numbers, so to speak, on a printout page or on their computer. And she said a proper diagnosis is listening to your patient, asking them questions, letting them ask you questions. And then, as a naturopathic doctor, you factor in all of the elements, diet, lifestyle, environment, stress, emotions. You can go on and on with that, but you're looking at a full picture. So it's very important to have that two-way dialogue. And Whimsy said the art of a diagnosis is part of that is listening, asking questions. They ask questions, but it's also your education, your background, your experience. You marry all of that together. And one of the things she taught me is sometimes there can be like 5 perfectly viable diagnoses for a situation. And there really are. And I got to experience that for myself. And she said, even that you've got to weigh. And that's where a lot of your intuition and discernment comes in. And she's very good at doing that. And she taught me how to do that. Something I was very proud of. Yes, this is a show about Dr. Whimsy today, but she deserves this. Um, she taught me how to really do a formal medical diagnosis, something that I thought I could not do, but I did it. And it was for a friend of mine who had been misdiagnosed. I'm not going to give his identity here, so I don't think I'm violating anything, but it was a friend of mine. He had been misdiagnosed as having had a heart attack. And I just knew. Hi, Renee. Thank you for joining. I knew he had not had a heart attack. I knew that. But his doctors, where he was in a few states away, in a little country town, just flipped him off and said, "Oh, you've had a heart attack." Well, no, I knew there was more to this. My friend was going through serious prostate trouble. I mean, very serious, where it was his swollen prostate was completely closing off his urethra, and his urine was backing up into his kidneys and saturating them. And it was, as luck would have it, whimsy, because every week we would take a different topic, and we were talking about kidneys, adrenals, the renal system, and, the kidney, as with almost any organ in the body, it's far more complex than what people think. People just think of the kidneys as filtering the blood. No, the kidneys perform a lot of functions in the body. And one of the things they do is regulate blood pressure. When the kidneys become too saturated with water, when there's too much water, that's a sign that they need to bring down the blood pressure, and they will I'm oversimplifying here. Anybody medical out there knows I'm being very, very simple here, but it's much more complex. But the kidneys will, through a chain of reactions, cause the heart to start beating much, much faster to get the blood pressure down. And I somehow knew that's what was really going on with my friend. He wasn't having a heart attack. His heart was reacting to his seriously oversaturated kidneys, saturated with urine, not water, with urine, causing them to shut down, which the doctors were not even addressing. And the poor man was close to going into a coma. That's how bad it was. And this was years ago, but I did a 10-page formal medical diagnosis of what I believed was really going on. And I gave it to Whimsy. And Whimsy read it. And she said, "Congratulations. This is good. You have done something that his own doctors could not diagnose. You did an excellent diagnosis." And she said, "I feel like a mother hen. I feel so proud of you for what you did." And of course, I just said, "Whimsy, it's because you taught me well." But I was able to get that diagnosis to my friend, and he presented it to his doctors. And he acknowledged I saved his life. But I saved his life because Whimsy taught me. The gift just, she passed the torch on, and she does that with her people. And anyway, I'm hoping a lot of people are going to watch the replay of this show, people who are not on right now. Please, please have compassion for Dr. Whimsy right now. She had a bad period last week, and she lashed out at some people. She expressed a lot of anger because she was in a lot of emotional pain. She was dealing with altitude sickness. It was just a perfect storm of events. And she explained it very well on her own channel. And I hope you will watch some of her later videos. But I love my friend very much. That's not going down a rabbit hole with Whimsy. That's just me standing in solidarity with my beautiful friend who's like family to me. And she even honored me yesterday. She did a show explaining in greater detail, and I guess it's okay to say this because she said it herself, about how her issues with her family, she feels violated by her older sister, disrespected, and she had to terminate that relationship with her sister for her own mental health. Whimsy had a very abusive marriage. This husband used her and violated her horribly. She talked about that, and she said a lot of that pain still comes up for her. You can hear this all in her own video, in her own words. I'm just lightly talking over it. But at the end of her video, she said, "I have no family right now except for one, Chuck Dransfield. He's my family right now. He's my emergency contact. He's my family." I was deeply and profoundly touched by that. Now, I think Whimsy has more family than just me, but fact that she would say that was beautiful and meaningful. And so I am here right now as her family to defend her. And any of you out there, anybody who knows me well, knows that I am very profoundly loyal to the people in my life. In fact, Joyce, you've done my astrological chart. I think you even said that showed up in my chart. I'm very loyal to people. I can't help that. I'm also, my zodiac sign is Cancer. We're the, shall we say it, the Jewish mothers of the zodiac. We're very caring and nurturing of people. We love the people in our lives. We're loyal and devoted to the people in our lives. So maybe I shouldn't keep expanding upon that, but I thank you for giving me a little soapbox today. I think that was important that I talk about that. I'm just gonna have a little drink here. I'm sorry, I haven't been looking at your comments too much. Goddess Val, diagnosing is definitely an art form. I'm studying practical homeopathy. That's wonderful, Goddess Val. A very dear friend of mine by the name of Jennifer Norton, who's an energy healer. She's studying practical homeopathy right now. She already works with homeopathy. In fact, one of the things Jennifer uses homeopathy for is for emotional ailments. You know, you may know this yourself, Goddess Val, from your own studies, how diverse homeopathy is. And of course, many physical ailments in the body do have a core and emotional and spiritual things that we're holding on to. That was, Louise Hayes, her book, You Can Heal Your Life, that whole back of the book, it's just a whole glossary of maladies, physical maladies, and the emotional, spiritual reason behind it. There's another book called Messages from the Body that goes into much more detail about that. But Jennifer has given me homeopathic remedies sometimes for issues along those lines. Was this feisty? Pardon me, I don't sort of need my glasses sometimes to better read these comments here. Feisty Butterfly Tarot. Speaking of whimsy, she's raw and real, and I will always love her because of this. Yes, thank you for saying that. She was just a little, some people found her too raw and real last week, but that honestly, because I know Whimsy so well and I know her heart, I love her when she's being impassioned and raw and real. Um, it's not always understood. And that's often the case for those of us who follow our own path. We're unconventional. Those of us who are artists, writers, actors, musicians, psychic readers, we often are misunderstood by conventional society. It's not always easy for us. Like I had a rough childhood. I was very bullied because of who I was. People just did not get me in this little rural town. But I wouldn't take anything back. Everything happens for a reason. Everything has a blessing. And I even look on that period because I grew up with very few friends. I was like the pariah in my school. Nobody wanted the taint of me, the school nerd, the one who's the whipping boy, the bully. It's not cool to be associated. So I didn't have a lot of friends. But do you know that was one of the luckiest things that ever happened to me because when I was growing up, it gave me a chance to write, to draw, to paint, to use my imagination, to in ways that I might not have done had I not been alone. Because I was alone, I had no choice but to learn to be literally my own best friend. An overused term, be your own best friend. You got to love yourself. But that's what I had to do. That was part of my survival. And that has served me my entire life. I joke about this with um, the pandemic lockdown. You remember that in 2020 when we couldn't leave our homes? And I know people who were freaking out. I can't stand it. I gotta get out. And I was just happy as could be. I was happy as it could be, being alone with my cat, and my music, and my books, and my movies. And I just bought more streaming channels. I had lots of movies to watch, and I was perfectly content being home for 5 days at a stretch and not going outside and just enjoying food and life and resting and kind of recentering myself. I did very well with it. I'm to this day, I'm very good at being alone. Don't get me wrong. I adore people. I adore social settings, but I'm one of these people. I have no problem going to a restaurant by myself. I have no problems traveling by myself, going to a play or a movie by myself. It's like Julia Cameron and The Artist's Way, where she talks about every week you have an artist date with yourself. I've just been doing that all my life. Uh, let's see where's some other comments here. Crafting a company. She trusts me. Yeah, Whimsy does. And you know what? I take that trust with honor. I know what a fragile thing that can be, and I know how special it is. So yes, I take that with honor that Whimsy trusts me. Um, Renee, family sucks, knows the feeling. Yes, now I'm lucky. I have a small family, but we get along very, very well. My sister, my nieces, nephews, we're fine. We're like friends when we get together. I realize how lucky I am. But I have, through the years, accepted invitations to other families' Thanksgiving dinners. And any of you have done this probably knows what I'm talking about. When you're just sitting there as an outsider, watching objectively all the dynamics taking place. And what I have found is, not saying this for every family I've been with, but I have been to Thanksgiving dinners where I get the vibe I'm surrounded by a lot of people who do not really like each other, who do not really want to be together, and they're going through the motions, all the small talk and the pleasantries, and it's all kind of forced and artificial. And I'm just sitting there watching it, and I'm like, mhm. I'm glad I don't have this in my family. I'm glad that's not a problem. But yeah, a lot of dynamics come up. And I don't think my dear friend Anastasia is doing a show tonight. I haven't heard, but um and I don't like to talk for other people because I feel like that's their right, not mine. But she's been open about some of her family issues and so forth. And okay, I'm gonna be careful. I don't want to say stuff I shouldn't say, but yeah. I think this Thanksgiving was challenging for her also, but I'll let her talk about it if she wishes to. But it just seems to be for many. And also, this was a Mercury retrograde, right, Joyce? A Mercury retrograde. And I thought, oh my God, all these families, because we watch the news and we see all these people flying cross country to be with their families and all the problems that come up. But I just thought all these families gathered together all the way, all across the country, Mercury retrograde. And I thought, oh my God, all the potential for fights and arguments and all, because we've seen that happen. We've seen that happen. I'm thinking of that movie Jodie Foster directed. I think it was called Home for the Holidays. I think that's what it's called. It was Anne Bancroft and Robert Downey Jr. and some others, and it was about a family getting together at Thanksgiving, and all hell breaks loose. And yes, my friend is doing much better now. Thank you for asking. And crafting and conjuring, I have the same issue with my older sister. Yeah, we could do a whole show on this one. It's just there's a lot of dynamics in families, a lot of hurt, a lot of rage, a lot of anger. You know, there's a reason we incarnate as families. You know, good reasons, but there's also reasons we come and it's just like relationships. I am of the theory that relationships are meant to push our buttons. There's a lot of good, but there's also in almost any relationship a lot of bad, the good, bad, the ugly. We push each other's buttons because we know each other's vulnerabilities. And that's certainly true with people you grow up with in a family. You know each other's vulnerabilities. And sometimes those buttons get pushed. They do. Ward, I've had ups and downs with mine. I'm getting along better with my brother than before. I still feel relieved when visits end without arguments. Yeah, I hear that a lot from people. Let's see here. Let me see here. Sorry, I lost my place in the comments because they skip on me. Let me go back here. Pardon me, please. I don't know why it does this. When I scroll down, and then I have to go back to where the sentence was. It's Goddess Vow. Yes, emotional remedies. I'm using Ignatia 30 times, 2 times a day for grief. Yes. I've taken that too through Jennifer Norton, prescribing those things to me. I've learned a lot about homeopathy from her. And, and I did homeopathy in my work, but it was always for physical ailments, health related. And she's taught me about the use of it for emotional remedies. It's quite fascinating. But yes, as Ward said, Goddess Vow, I'm sorry you're dealing with grief. And I am too, Goddess Vow. But, I look at grief as like, weather. We have sunny days, we have rainy days, we have stormy days. It's life. We wouldn't be alive without going through these experiences. And I'm sure you would agree with me, even when you're in grief, it is teaching you things if you listen to it and you talk to it, you ask the grief, what do you have to tell me? I like to sit down with pen and paper. That's and just start writing as I hear my inner voice. But we all have our methods. But I hope it's better for you. Crafting and conjuring. I've spent a lifetime in isolation. I've spent a lot of my time in isolation, but I'm perfectly, I'm lucky. I deal with it well, for the reasons I said earlier in the show, but I know for others it's profoundly painful. But I've been very lucky. I've had my talents. So I said to a friend of mine, words you will never hear out of my mouth are, I'm bored. You will never hear me say I'm bored. I always have things to do. I always have things to work on. But let's see here. Looking for some other comments here. Renee, when I had cancer this year, not one family member called. Nothing. That's what I said. They're lost. You're right, Renee. They're lost. I find sometimes it's difficult. People do want to reach out, but they're afraid they don't know what to say. They're afraid they don't know how to handle it. I've been there myself. And sometimes, as I've said to people who have reached out, I've said, just be yourself. Just be yourself. Just give me your friendship. Just be here. You don't have to do anything special or unusual. I understand, but I think that's where a lot of it comes from when people don't reach out. They're afraid to reach out. That's just a theory of mine. You may have your own thoughts about that. And Andy, you were saying it didn't bother me being home. That's when my mom was home with me. Yeah. Or gosh, so anyway, I just that you can upon draw strength from happier memories of your loved ones. Looking at some of the comments here. Darn, I wish this wouldn't skip on me. Renee, can anyone tell us where I can get my birth chart done? Well, Joyce, maybe you would have something to suggest there. And I have a question, Chuck. Would you ever do an interview with a celebrity on your stream? Sure. Sure, I would. Of course, I would. You know, I'm having trouble with this YouTube thing here, figuring out how to do the split screen and have another person on. Um, Whimsy uses a different system, and that's how we're able to do it. But if I could ever figure it out on here, sure, I would do it. I have a couple of celebrity friends, but I also know that they care very much about their privacy. And for that reason, I probably would not interview them because I don't think they would want to do that sort of thing, so but yeah, I would always be open to it. In fact, I'm open to just interviews, period. I have done them before and I've loved doing them. When I'm on Whimsy show, we do a once a month thing with authors, with independent authors. We interview them. And I love doing that. I find interviewing comes very naturally to me. Um, Let me check some of the comments here. Some of you are just talking amongst yourselves here. Um, oh yeah, the comment. I definitely noticed glitches with tech and transit during Mercury retrogrades. Oh, Mercury retrogrades mess horribly with communication, any kind of communication. That's why often a lot of things that people say are misconstrued. Lots of misunderstandings happen unintentionally. That's why I was thinking, oh my God, Thanksgiving family gatherings during a Mercury retrograde. Could only imagine. Uh, Let me see. Scroll through the comments here. Crafting. I'm sorry, check for multi. Oh, please don't apologize. I love when you talk amongst yourself. That's one of the things I'm here for. Let you all be friends with each other. Chuck, with mom not being home for a whole year now, I'm wishing I had friends to hang out with. Yeah, I understand, Andy. Not everybody feels the same way. It's like I made a conscious choice to make my Thanksgiving very low key. If I'd wanted, I could have been with families. I could have done that, but I find more than often than not, I just want Thanksgiving simple, simple with friends, like a couple of friends I get together with a lot. We purposely don't dress up. We have been in like sweat clothes having our Thanksgiving and just being comfortable and happy and watching stuff on TV. And sometimes those are the best Thanksgivings ever. Drink a little more here. It's not supposed to do product placement on YouTube. Hence, I have to put my hand over the brand on this cup. Oh, what the hell? It's Starbucks, but it's not Starbucks in the cup. It's water, so I can keep my voice hydrated here. So let me see here. One of the things I was going to talk about was Sasha's here sleeping. I'm going to resist the temptation to hold her up again. She's being very sweet right now. Um, you know that I am a professional artist and I am taking commissions right now for Christmas. But this is a painting I did of Lucille Ball. Let's see if I can hold it back far enough. This is Lucille Ball in 1939. And you see it's a great big canvas painting. Okay, I'm going to put it away for the moment. It's a bit hard to hold this thing up on camera. If this were a professional show where I had a cameraman who could actually dolly out or zoom in or zoom out, that would be wonderful. But anyway, that's my painting of Lucille Ball in 1939 when she was at RKO Studios. Well, thank you. Thank you for your compliments. Okay. One more time. Lucy in 1939. She was something special, wasn't she? I've always said Lucille Ball was truly one in a billion. This beautiful, beautiful woman who could do the most spectacular, outrageous, pie in the face, in the mud comedy. She was fearless. She was fearless, but as you can see from that painting, she had, before I Love Lucy, a very glamorous period in the movies in Hollywood. And I thought I'd hold that up today. This was based on a painting that I did for my friend Mary Rappaport, who owns Lucille Ball's childhood home in Celeron, New York, adjacent to Jamestown. People go, Lucy was from Jamestown. Well, Celeron and Jamestown were like the twin cities. They were Minneapolis, St. Paul, or something like that. They were so close together that the lines blurred. And that's where Lucy's childhood home was. And it's one of the proudest things in my life that Mary commissioned me to do four paintings of the Ball family as they looked in 1920, including little 8 or 9 year old Lucille Ball, her little baby brother Fred, their mother Dee Dee, and the grandparents, Fred and Flora Bell Hunt. And those paintings now hang permanently in the living room of Lucille Ball's childhood home. And that childhood home is open to the public. You can call Mary for an appointment, and they will give you an incredible guided tour with all of the history. Mary spared no expense in perfectly restoring that home back to the way it was when Lucy lived there in the 20s. Mary worked with Lucille Ball's 91-year-old brother, Fred, whose mind was still very sharp. And he remembered exactly where everything was. He knew what was in the house was original, what wasn't. I've told this before, how they went up in the attic and found wallpaper swatches. And he was able to go, okay, that was in the living room. That was in Lucy's room. That was in the kitchen. And Mary, and let me tell you, this was expensive. She had those wallpapers hand silk screened, replicated. So, and then she and Fred were able to track down original furnishings because they didn't go far. They were still in Jamestown. It was when the family lost the home in 1927. And a lot of the stuff was sold off to people in the town. They were able to get a lot of the original furnishings back, light fixtures, everything. And Mary, being the perfectionist she is, like me, the great lover of historical accuracy, knew the story of how Lucy used to love to wash dishes in the kitchen, and she would look in a mirror and practice her acting and her characters and her emotions. Well, over the decades, someone had put a window in. Mary had that whole side of the house torn down just so she could rebuild the wall so she could put the mirror back over the sink where Lucy used to wash the dishes and practice. Well, that's a person after my heart, anyone who has that kind of accuracy. So that's Mary Rappaport and what she's done. And my paintings are in her home. Anyway, this painting, yes, why not show it again since I'm promoting myself here, is a version of a painting that I did for Mary for her home. Now, the version I did for Mary, Lucy had a red hat. And I made a few changes, because I'm very much about integrity when I sell a person original painting. It is a one-of-a-kind original painting. So there's enough changes. But I love that painting I did for her so much that I made one for me with the intention of making it different. I gave Lucy, of course, the turquoise hat and turquoise beads and on. And with both of the paintings, I did cheat a little bit because Lucy was not a redhead in 1939. She was a strawberry blonde. But Mary wanted her to be a redhead, and I wanted her to be a redhead too. So I tweaked the strawberry blonde a little bit because Lucy without her red hair is like Charlie Chaplin without his hat and cane. But I'm very, very fond of this painting and proud of it. And I don't put my work up on the wall. I rarely put my own work up because being the perfectionist, I keep seeing things that I want to change, things that I want to tweak, and so forth. It's very hard for me to leave a painting alone. That's why I just know not to put my stuff up. And something else I'll tell you that's interesting. Okay, I'm going to sit back a little bit. You will see the bird on the hat. It's kind of intriguing because while Lucy did not have a problem with birds themselves, she was perfectly fine with them. Sorry, I'm trying to put this painting back. Oh, no smooth way of doing it without knocking the laptop here. She had a thing where she despised stuffed birds, artificial birds, illustrations of birds. And she said the reason for that was when she was 3.5 years old, her father died. And when she got the news, a bird flew in through the window of the house, and the bird was flying around the living room, and little 3.5-year-old Lucy was traumatized and crying hysterically. And so she couldn't stand stuffed birds, pictures of birds. So much so that her house in Beverly Hills, she had ordered this very expensive silk wallpaper. And upon looking at it, she saw little birds, little paintings of birds in the wallpaper, and she demanded that the wallpaper be ripped down immediately and replaced. It was a big trigger for her. So that photo I worked from, I thought, poor Lucy, here she is with this hat on, with this stuffed bird right on top of her head. I know that was not easy for Lucy, but she was such a pro, such a professional. But she had to pose with that bird on her head, and I know it was not easy for her. And yes, Anastasia has paintings at her place. Oh, she has a lot of her artwork up. Wonderful. And yes, Karen, Fred Mertz was named after Lucy's brother, Fred. Yes, very much so. Yes, Kathy, if a sparrow flies into your home, it's a death omen. I don't know what kind of bird it was, but it upset Lucy terribly. Poor thing. So anyway, I just wanted to show that because I am taking commissions for artwork for Christmas gifts. Anybody's interested, I just want you can see what I do. But also, I thought it would be appropriate to hold the painting up of Lucy from 1939 because that was the year she met Desi. Oh, no, wait. Pardon me. She met Lucy in 1940. But it was around the time. That's what I should have said. Duh. This is where I'm on live. And if I could edit myself, I would have taken that sentence back. She did not meet Lucy Lucy and Desi did not meet in 1939. They met in 1940. And they met at RKO Studios, which of course is where this, the portrait, the photograph was taken where I did my painting, RKO Studios, where she was under contract. And, they met in the commissary of RKO. Indirectly met each other because they had, trying to think here, this is going to be long if I tell this story, so maybe I'm kind of editing as I go along here. How much do I want to tell here? But yes, it was the movie Too Many Girls, which Desi Arnaz had been one of the featured players on Broadway, and he was one of the actors who was brought out to Hollywood to recreate his role. And Lucy at the time was filming Dance Girl Dance with Maureen O'Hara. And that particular day was the day she and Maureen had this big, their characters had this big fist fight on camera. I mean, where they're rolling on the floor and they're ripping each other's clothes and their hair and everything. And Lucy even had the makeup artist gave her a big black eye. And of course, her hair was all messed up and she was all disheveled. And it was lunch break in the RKO commissary. And someone said to Desi, "Oh, that's Lucille Ball. She's going to be the star of your movie." And Desi said, "She is going to be the star?" And Desi said she looks like a $2 whore who just got beaten up by her pimp. And Desi, from Lucy's perspective, it's so much fun because they both wrote autobiographies and tell their own stories. Desi had been out on the the front lawn area playing football with some of the guys, and he was all sweaty and messy and everything in his hair. So they both looked like trash when they first saw each other in the commissary. And Lucy herself said, "Oh, I didn't think he was so hot." They both looked like hell. And so it's very interesting. And the story was that it was like 2, 3 hours later, they had to meet for a music rehearsal. It was like the first rehearsal for Too Many Girls music rehearsal. And they had both gotten cleaned up and fixed up. And in Desi's autobiography, he said that she was wearing this beautiful, sexy, tight yellow sweater, and her strawberry blonde hair was pulled back. And this is documented because Ann Miller and Van Johnson, who were going to be in the movie, were there. They witnessed this. They told this. They said, Desi said out loud, "What a hunk of woman." And Van and Ann both said there was so much electricity in the room. Everybody knew it. Everybody was picking up, but they were so magnetically attracted to each other. Everybody felt it in the room. And Lucy and Desi both said in their autobiographies that Desi approached her and said, "Do you know how to rumba, Lucille?" Meaning he was wanting to teach her to rumba. And they went out on like their first date like a night or two later. But it was just so apparent to everybody in the room how attracted they were to each other. And I am devoutly of the belief those two were twin flames. They were soulmates. And they knew it. They knew it. And Lucy had said she actually had seen Desi months before on the Broadway stage. She went to New York and she saw Too Many Girls on the Broadway stage, and she said, "Oh my God." She said she was very attracted to him, very magnetized to him on the stage. She said he had such star quality and presence. Oh, Crafting and Conjuring, thank you. Oh, wait, I don't know if you subscribe to Andy's channel, my channel, but nice work, show us more. Thank you. Thank you. If you met me, thank you very much. And yeah, Lucy and Desi, it's undeniable they were soulmates. So I thought this would be a good painting to hold up today. I wanted to show a little of my work, but I also wanted to tie it in. Oh, it's Andy's channel. Okay, well, that's great. Good for you, Andy. Yeah, well, they were both invased. I don't know if they were engaged formally, but they were involved with other people, but they dumped him immediately. And I think Lucy was, well, there are different accounts. Some say it was Broderick Crawford, but others say it was Alexander Hall, the director. And of course, Lucy had also had a big affair. And he was married too. This was Pandro Berman, the head of RKO Studios. She was having an affair with him also. But yeah, there was a friend of Lucy. Oh no, it was I think it was her cousin Cleo who was still rooming with Lucy. And she said Lucy came home and said, "That's it. That's it. He's the one. He's the one. That's it." She knew it. It's a beautiful, beautiful love story. And I think every time you watch I Love Lucy, that's like encoded into the energy of the show. It's unspoken. It's just an energy that's present. It's my own theory why I Love Lucy has lived on. Next year is going to be the 75th anniversary of the show. Why it still lives on. There is just such an intense, honest love encoded into that show. So much so that even when Lucy and Desi were having their marital problems, they were able to put that aside to do that show. It was like the show gave them a vacation from their problems where they just got to be in love again. And they both said that because they never got over each other. Even after their divorce, they never got over each other. Even after they remarried, they never got over each other. Desi said in an interview on television in the early 80s, he said, "Oh, Lucy and I are very close. We talk sometimes 2, 3 times a week on the phone. We're very close." So that was there, you know, and also when they did divorce, they both became desperately ill. They both almost died. Uh, Lucy, it was pneumonia, serious pneumonia. She lost a lot of weight. It was when she was doing her Broadway show, and she finally had to leave the show because her health was so bad. She was desperately ill with pneumonia. And Desi had diverticulitis so bad, he had to have a temporary colostomy. Um, they put the bag on you and everything. He had to have a temporary because it was that bad, but he nearly died. She nearly died. And they both talked about that. I think Lucy said herself, she said, "We were never the same after that divorce, physically, mentally, or emotionally." And I'm talking about this, of course, because yesterday was the 85th anniversary of their marriage, their elopement. And I do have a video on my YouTube channel, one of the very first ones I ever did, where I talk about the whole thing. And I think I'm going to avoid it right now because it is recorded. You can hear it. But I'm touching upon some of it. Their love was just so incredible. And when I think how they went on to create this body of work that eventually was aired in 78 countries and witnessed by more than 3 billion people. There are historians who have actually said Lucille Ball's face is probably the most seen in the history of humanity. I mean, what grew out of their love was this show. And, I've told this before, the only reason they did the show, at least so they claim, was because they were trying to save their marriage. Desi was on the road with his band, and at least 6 months of the year. Lucy was in Hollywood making movies, and they wanted to have a family. They wanted to have children, and they knew they had to find a way to work together. They had to find a way. And this was when Lucy was doing her radio show, no, not Too Many Girls, to My Favorite Husband. And CBS approached her about doing it as a television show. This was, 1950. And Lucy issued an ultimatum. She said, "I will only do the show if my husband Desi can be my co-star." And of course, CBS balked at that. "Oh, no, you can't have this Cuban with this thick Spanish accent. No. People are never going to buy that. No, that's out of the question. People will never believe him as your husband." And she said, "But he is my husband. Why wouldn't they believe that?" So to prove it, they created a vaudeville show, an act that they could tour the country with. And Lucy's good friend, Buster Keaton, the great silent screen superstar, the great comedian. He had become friends with Lucy in the 1940s, and they were both at MGM, both down on their luck. They formed a great friendship, and Buster taught Lucy all of his comedy. He was one of the very first to see her genius and really recognize it and encourage it. So he helped play a hand in creating the show. Also, if you remember I Love Lucy, Pepito, the Spanish clown, he also helped create the show for them. And they went on the road and played a lot of major theaters, major cities. Everywhere they went, rave reviews. The audiences adored Lucy and Desi together. it was one of the first times they had ever really worked together. In fact, a lot of those routines were later put on I Love Lucy. I remember, like, I'm Sally Sweet, the girl from Delancey Street, that whole thing. That whole dance was in their show. That whole bit, where Lucy's got the long sleeves and, she's on her all fours like a seal going, oh, 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 and Desi's throwing fish to her and she's playing the xylophone, the horns and everything. That was part of their vaudeville act also. They saved all of that, but they were so beloved, and they went back to CBS and said, look, the audience accepts us as a husband and wife. They love us. And CBS agreed to let them do the pilot together. What was the same word? Remember seeing that MGM Picture of the Stars in 1944, the Arnazes were seated virtually on opposite ends from each other in their gigantic group photo, like they were trying to keep them apart. Oh, yeah, yeah. That was purposely being downplayed about their marriage, because it was looked upon as a mixed marriage. Lucy, the all-American redhead, and the Cuban, the Latin, it was the Hispanic. It was looked upon as a mixed marriage, and so, yeah, it was downplayed. But I do know that they did work together in 1949. In fact, it was one of their very first television appearances, the Ed Wynn Show. And I think it's on YouTube, 1949, the Ed Wynn Show, where Lucy and Desi guested on that. And of course, it was early 1951. They shot the pilot. 1950, they were on the road. And tragically, Lucy lost a baby. She miscarried, I think, in her 5th month. They were so happy they were together and they were working, and she was pregnant, and then she lost the baby. And there was even a story about how they found out about it from Walter Winchell, because Lucy had gone to the doctor, and those back in the days when you took a rabbit test, and she had taken the rabbit test, but you had to wait for the results. Walter Winchell had connections, and he found out from the lab that she was pregnant. He announced it on the show, and Lucy and Desi, they were between matinee and evening performances, and they were in their dressing room. They had the radio on, and they heard it. That's how they found out they were going to have a baby. And Lucy said, well, if Winchell says it must be true. But she did lose the baby, unfortunately. And she even worried that maybe all that bouncing around the floor, doing that seal bit and everything, and she tormented herself, wondering if that had induced the miscarriage. But she got pregnant again, and she was 6 months pregnant when they shot the pilot for I Love Lucy. And I've told the story of how Lucy had this great dream. She had 2 great dreams. She wanted to be the biggest star in Hollywood, and she wanted to be a mother. And at the age of 39, she thought her dreams were dead. She thought it was all over. It was not going to happen. When you're almost 40 years old, in those days, women, my mother was 40 and she had me, but it was not common for a 40-year-old woman to have a baby, a first-time mother. And that was the time when a woman was 40 in Hollywood, that was considered, your ingenue days were over. Your leading lady days were over. You were an old woman. You were ready for character roles. So she just thought it was all over for her. Her dreams were dead. And here, flash forward the next year, in July, in fact, I know the day was July 17th, 1951, she gave birth to her first child, Lucy Arnaz. And then weeks later, just a matter of weeks later, let's see, she had Lucy's birthday, August 6th, was her 40th birthday. September 8th, they started rehearsal for I Love Lucy. And within 4 months, I Love Lucy shot to #1. It was bigger than any movie on the theaters. It was hot. It was big. Lucy got her wishes. First time mother at the age of 40. and she literally became the biggest star in Hollywood. That was the era where her peers like Joan Crawford, Betty Davis, Barbara Stanwyck, they were like her age. Their careers were going down. Movies were being replaced. Movie theaters were not doing well. Everybody was staying home watching television. That's why I say Lucy had become the biggest star in Hollywood. I mean, it's just an incredible story how all that came true for her. And she and Desi found a way to stay home together. And they, within a year, she was pregnant again. And they had their second child. Um, let's see, where's some comments here? Who remembers the actor Joey Brown? Oh yeah, I've heard of him. Know of him, of course. He's most remembered for Some Like It Hot, and that famous line at the end of the movie, nobody's perfect. And Jack Lemmon pulls his wig off and goes, I'm a man. And Joey Brown just goes, nobody's perfect. And Billy Wilder even said that was the greatest line he ever wrote. And I've been to his grave in Westwood. That's on his tombstone. Nobody's perfect. He said, I'm a writer, but nobody's perfect. He loved that line. Oh yeah, yeah. And Ed Wynn, I know, played Mary Poppins' uncle. Yeah, I just watched that the other night. And of course, our beloved Dick Van Dyke is just I think he's like 2 weeks away from being 100 years old. God bless him. I've met him. He's a great man. What was this word? Carol Lombard to the rescue. Well, yeah, any of you who know that story, Lucy and Carol Lombard were extremely close friends. In fact, Lucille Ball in the 70s on the Dinah Shore show. Dinah Shore goes, Lucy, who is your greatest influence as a comedian? And Lucy said, Carol Lombard. She was very emphatic. She said, Carol Lombard was my influence. That she was my comedic influence. But anyway, after Carol's death, she used to come to Lucy and give her a lot of advice. Lucy talked about this in her autobiography, advised her many times over the years. And in fact, Lucy was once with Clark Gable and told him this. And she said Clark Gable's face just went white and he couldn't talk. He was, to his dying day, he was devastated over losing Carol. But anyway, there's the famous story. I'll repeat it here since it's appropriate, where Lucy did not know whether to do I Love Lucy because it was a huge gamble. Because many stars, Hollywood stars, movie stars who went to television were blackballed by the movie industry. Movie industry wouldn't hire them anymore. And Lucy feared she was going to sacrifice everything to do this TV show. She would never have her career again. Of course, now, ironically, because she was so big, MGM came to her and Desi in 1953 begging them to do a movie, which was the Long, Long Trailer. It did not kill her film career, but that was her fear. And so she had a lot on the line. And she was vacillating back and forth. And she said she had a vivid dream where Carol Lombard had a long cigarette holder and a beautiful mink coat and very glamorous. And she said, Carol said, honey, give it a whirl. Give it a chance. You can't lose. I promise you, you can't go wrong. Do it. And Lucy woke up from that dream and said, if I know now to do the show, if Carol said it, I know it's true. And of course, Carol Lombard was right. Lucy couldn't go wrong. It was the best professional decision of her entire life. It made her a legend. The impact that Lucy has had on the world. And I've talked to so many people who have said they've been in their deepest despair, sorrow. They put on I Love Lucy and it's like therapy and they feel okay again. They know they're going to be all right. That show is powerful and it's so full of love and joy and healing. And that's how it all came about. That's 85 years ago yesterday. This all-American redhead and this Cuban took a chance and eloped to the Byron Beagle River the Byron River Beagle Club in Connecticut. They were married, and then they had to rush back because Desi was doing a stage show at the Roxy Theater in New York. And there are all these wonderful photos, you can find them on the internet, of Desi carrying Lucy over the threshold of his dressing room. And Lucy's wearing a black dress and a fur hat and a fur coat. And Lucy even lamented about that because she had because she was in New York at the time doing a press tour, she had been touring different parts of the country. Studios would send their stars out to appear at theaters for appearances. And she said she had this trunk with all these beautiful clothes, beautiful things she could have worn, and the trunk got delayed. And all she had to wear was that black dress and that fur coat and fur hat. And she worried that wearing the black dress was bad luck to get married, but she had no choice. There's also the story of how, because it was so impetuous, Desi didn't have time to get her a wedding ring. So they had to buy a cheap brass band at Woolworth's department store. And that's what Lucy's wedding ring was. And Lucy refused to ever give it up. Desi offered to buy her a better ring. And her one concession, she had the ring dipped in platinum because it was turning her finger green, the brass. But she was very sentimental about it. That was her wedding band. And they even did an I Love Lucy episode where she lost her wedding ring. And, it got tied up into the tail of little Ricky's kite, but she thought that it was when they were building the barbecue in the back, and Lucy feared that the ring was lost in the cement. So she and Ethel had to take that whole barbecue apart and put it back together again. They were up all night and they couldn't find the ring. And Ricky and Fred hit the roof, and Fred was going, "Ethel, were you part of this?" And what is this? Sorry. Something on my nose there. I apologize for that. Um, Ethel looked Fred in the eye and said, "Yes, I did. If you have anything to say about it, I'm going to take you apart and put you back together again." But anyway, Ricky was saying, "Lucy, I'll buy you another ring. I'll buy you a beautiful ring with diamonds going all the way around it." And Lucy's going, "I want my old ring with the little diamonds going halfway around it." It was so sweet, but it was similar to Lucy never wanting to give up that brass ring from Woolworths. That was her wedding ring. So that's my little tribute to um, Lucy and Desi's 85th wedding anniversary of yesterday and all they've done for us. Let's see. There were some other comments here. People are giving me time checks. It's 6:50 my time. I really need to sign off because I've got a lot of work to do tonight. I'm not sure if Whimsy is going to want to do a show tomorrow or not because she may need to rest up. So it's tentative. Normally it's 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. On the Oracle of Whimsy channel, we do a show called Taco Tuesdays. And Thursdays is just, I don't know if we've ever named the Thursday show, but maybe we'll be on tomorrow. If we're not, that's the reason, but we will be back. Whimsy is getting much better. And I know that anybody's watching this who's a watcher of the shows, I promise you that Lucy and Whimsy. I've been talking about so much about both of those great ladies, but I know that Whimsy loves you all very much. And she will be back. We'll both be back doing more. And what was this? Mel Brooks's birthday. Yeah, I think he's almost 100 himself. Wait, oh no, he turns 100 June 28th of next year. I hope he makes it. And he and Anne Bancroft, they had an extraordinary marriage also. They had one of the best marriages in Hollywood. They were together 45 years. Talk about two very different people, but soulmates, absolute soulmates. Yeah, Lucy herself said she was surprised the bond lasted 6 weeks. I think she was being a little facetious there, but they both talked about their marriage. They were together 20 years, and Desi even said, 20 years, that's a success. That's success. 2 children, 20 years. The I Love Lucy we created, what came out of that, and he said, "We're still very close to this day. We just had to go in our different directions." Yes, Joyce, thank you for the prayers for Whimsy. In fact, everyone out there, as I said before, if you are a believer in prayer or just sending out good energy, please do that for our beloved Whimsy. Pray for her, send her energy, send her love, please. And I'll consider that a favor for myself also. I really appreciate that. So anyway, I'm going to sign out now. A little hungry. I want to eat my dinner here. But I will be back here next week, same time, same place. I'll do my best to be on time. And thank you. Thank you very much. What was this, Andy? I would some prayers for my mom too. Oh, yes. Send Andy's mom some prayers too, please. So goodbye, everybody. Thank you.